Let's talk about all the wonderful indie releases coming our way November of 2023. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is the November 2023 indie / self-pub release list. Now I apologise, this list is very late this month. I was in Sydney, I got COVID, and I've just been out for a week, unfortunately. So most of these are available already. If any of them sound good, you go ahead and pick them up. It's only anything from the 20th onwards that is going to be a new release for the month. That being said, there are a smorgasbord of absolutely banger releases coming out in November of 2023, some of which I've had the pleasure of reading, and I hope you're going to go and pick some of these up. As always, these do not come from myself. These lists belong to Rob J. Hayes' blog and also Matthew Olney over at Epic Indie. We have a release calendar over there. The links will be down below. If you have a book release coming out later in the year or even in 2024, make sure you've got these lists saved because it really does give you a boost to the community. So go ahead and check them out. Also, before we get into the list, make sure you check in the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord should you want to come along for the ride. Now, we do have a lot to get through, so I will jump in just a minute. I will just say, quick warning, I'm not going to read full blurbs today. My breathing is still a little bit shite from COVID, unfortunately, so I will give you little snippets here and there as we go along. So, jumping into November 1st, the first book on this list is one that I've had the pleasure of reading, and I really enjoyed it, and I've just had a chat to the author here on the channel. I am talking about Sistah Samurai by Tatiana Obi with her novella, with this novella coming out, the Sword and Sorcery novella. It is a kick-ass love letter to all of the black women that have come before her. It is a shout out to Afro Samurai, and it is just a bunch of fun. The first line in this blurb really sums up the vibe of this book. This is no revenge story. I ain't got time for that. And Sistah Samurai definitely does not have time for that. Also on November 1st, we have Fool's Play. This is Systems Apocalypse Kismet, book number 1 by Tao Wong and David R. Packer. This is yet another entry into the Systems Apocalypse multiverse that is available to us, and a beautiful purple cover. I've only read one book in this multiverse so far, and I had an okay time with it. I listened to it. These are literary RPG books. I'm not sure if different sub-series do it differently at all, but the one that I read was super stats heavy and had a lot of numbers basically every time someone leveled up, which got a little bit repetitive. The first line of this blurb says, "Not everyone falls during an apocalypse, some rise to the occasion." And I would hope so that some people can survive. Also on the 1st of November, we have a cover that is super intriguing, giving me some comic book action-heavy vibes, and that is Alice, Ravenwood, and the Tomb of St. George. This is Malevolent and Divine, book number 1 by Orson Teller. This is YA, steampunk, sci-fantasy, cozy fantasy, all wrapped into one. And the first line says, "The mythological society are the only thing that is stopping this world from being overrun by violent, monstrous beings. The hours are flexible, there's no uniform to speak of, and the tea-making facilities are excellent." It sounds like it could be quite a fun time. On the 2nd of November, we have Legacy of a Hated God. This is by Patrick Samphire. This is Manic Thorn, book number 3. It's epic fantasy / urban fantasy. You've got a nice city in the background. City seems to be on fire. Not great for them, but there is a dog on the cover, and we do like dogs here at A Fictional Escapist. Also on the 2nd of November, we have Rematch of the Titans. This is Titan Wars book 3 by Samuel Gately, and this is epic fantasy / sword and sorcery. I'm pretty sure we saw the first cover or the second cover of this earlier this year on one of these lists, but like the book before and this one, it is a series continuation, so we will move on from there. Another series continuation we have or had come out on November 3rd is The Lion Vessel. This is the Sangwheel Chronicles book 3 by Marie M. Melanie, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, and this is another epic fantasy. It says, "Prophecy and rebellion ignite a race for ultimate power." A nice simple red cover on the back there. On the 6th of November, we have one that I've heard nothing but good things about, and that is The Hunters Lament by Steve Planet, and this is the first Grimdark entry that we have in this month. It says, infamous bounty hunter Bittersweet has led his crew of like-minded miscreants for nearly 3 decades. They can track and capture any man or woman in the known world for a price. But Sweet is tired. Decades of pursuing the lowest reaches that humanity has to offer has taken their toll. The grime, the lies, the danger, the death. He's sick of it all. And honestly, it sounds like I would probably be sick of it too. That sounds like quite a hard job. Also on November 6th, we have the Eldritch Arms Biff Stone Monster Hunter for Hire book number 1. This is by Barry K. Gregory. And what a cover. Like, I am not one for haunted house stories, but some of the covers and the houses look really cool. And this looks really cool. The tagline for this says Magnum PI meets Dresden Files in a tale of cosmic horror. That actually does sound kind of cool. The first line here says, would you trust one evil to save you from another? I honestly don't know. We've got a monster hunter in the blurb here, so if you like those vibes, then you might want to pick this one up. On November 7th, we've got Target 75. This is Systems Orphans Claire, book number 2 by J.J. Thorne. This is Sword and Sorcery, YA, Lit RPG, Progression Cultivation, Sci-Fantasy, any of those buzzwords, they're thrown in here. This cover actually looks really cool. It's probably one of my favorite covers that I've seen on this list this month, and I have personally bought 2 books off this list on vanity alone, just by covers, and we'll get to them when we get there. It says, don't be distracted, trust the quest, kill your target. Also on November 7th, we had Partial Function by JCM Byrne. I was lucky enough to get an arc for this. This was an absolutely wild ride, a wonderful taste of JCM's Byrne writing in this Sword and Sorcery. Action heavy, fast paced. It was just a great time. Monster hunter Akina Azure inherited the most powerful weapon in the martial world before retiring to a peaceful life to raise her twin girls. The Reaver has them kidnapped, thinking Akina will trade the weapon for their safe return. Will she, or will she use it to wreak a terrible retribution on the men who took her girls? Now, I know the answer to that question. I want you to go and find that one out for yourself, so maybe go and pick this one up. Also on November 7th, and the first book that I mentioned that I picked up purely on cover alone because this cover is absolutely stunning, is Merlin's Crucible. This is A Legacy of Shadows by James G. Robertson, epic fantasy / sword and sorcery, and just a reminder that I love big trees. Big trees on covers will get me excited. In the age of earthly magic, Merlin faces the uncertainty of an unrivaled challenge, destiny itself. After being haunted by elusive visitations from the dream world, he answers the summons of his long-estranged master, leaving behind the throne of King Arthur to venture forth. With the aid of his master's steadfast dragon, Faris Merlin embarks on a perilous odyssey, navigating the tricky boundaries that thread between worlds in pursuit of answers to his enigmatic questions. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. What doesn't look like a lot of fun on November 10th was Myrmaiden, the Stories of Midgate by R.M. Krogman, because there's a big giant shark on the cover, and I don't like the ocean or sharks. Ugh. This one says, Taiki is the third-born royal of the Mer Kingdom of Shigo. With her brother set to be king and a sister the Art Commodore, she has no worries beyond imagining adventures and exploring the fascinating ocean beyond her windows, except when the fascinating ocean holds this shark. Moving on. On November the 14th, we have Resurgence. This is Fractured Orbit book number 3 by Herman Struenagel. Herman, if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly, I apologize very much. Selfishly, I do not want to read the blurb for this one. Also, it's a book 3, so we will move on. I read book 1, Eclipse, earlier this month, and I had a really good time with it. I think it's super underrated sci-fi space opera dealing with some heavy issues like loss, and yeah, I had a great time with it. Can't wait to get to book 3. Also on November 14th, we have the Emerald Eclipse. This is the Crystal Halls book number 2 by Thomas K. Carpenter, and it is an entry into an urban fantasy series, and it just says the clans are on the verge of war. What else would the clans be doing, you know? They've got to pass the time somehow. Also on November 14th is one a lot of people are very excited about, particularly if you are someone who follows Wraithmark Creative. I am of course talking about Kraken Rider Z by David Estes and Dirk Ashton, and this is progression / cultivation fantasy, something with which Wraithmark seems to do quite a bit of. This cover, stunning. I've not read anything by either of these authors before, but I'm very curious as to both of them. So having them come together is quite exciting. It says there is one thing dragons fear, or sorry, if there's one thing dragons fear, it's a Kraken. I'm hearing some good buzz about this one. I'm hoping to pick it up myself in the future. So that means the next 10 years or something like that. Also on November 14th, we have the second installment of the Konglix by Zachary T. Sellers, which is for the Bloody Marquesa. I cannot pronounce this word. I'm so sorry. I believe we had the first book come in last month. I think it's been a very short time period between the two. Once again, the cover is stunning. I bought book one. If I'm remembering the series correctly, I bought book one just on the cover last month or whatever month it came up, and these books are chunky as well. I think they're like 700-800 pages, and they're books that I would probably want in hardcover on a shelf, and that's from someone who doesn't really collect a whole lot of hardcovers, although I have this year quite a few. But it is a book two, so we are going to have to move on. Also on the 14th of November, another one people are having some buzz about in the indie sphere is Bold Ascension, the Sundered Nation book number 2 by Vaughan Roycroft, and this is epic fantasy and a beautiful, beautiful cover. I really love these covers that almost look like a painting. Like if you didn't have the text on it, you would have it on a wall somewhere as a showpiece in your house because it is so friggin' beautiful. And I think that this is definitely one of those covers for me where I think it's just stunning. But no, not one that I've gone ahead and bought just based on cover alone. Quite a few releases coming out on November 20, starting with Pathlighter by Rob Lee. This is one that people are talking about. It is a grimdark entry. It's very fiery. It says, James is convinced that the gods have cursed him, left to fend for himself in a squalid city-state in the clutches of corrupt theocracy. As a lamplighter, James serves the palace by illuminating the streets each night with a flame from the god's temple. Despite his disdain for the gods, he feels a connection with the flame and a surprising yet small amount of control over its brightness. Sounds very cool to me. Cool cover. Looking forward to getting to that one. Also on the 20th of November, we have The Secret of the Thistle by Benjamin Averin. This is Rainfall in book number 2. I heard very good things about Salt in the Wound. I'm hearing very good things about this one here. And it says there's nothing more dangerous than a paranoid king. As fantasy readers, we can absolutely say that is correct. Paranoid kings are very, very dangerous. So here is the second installment of this series if you are looking out for it. On the 21st of November, we have the Deathless Son. This is the Frostmarked Chronicles book number 4 by Brendan Noble. This is epic fantasy, sword and sorcery, and YA. Death claims the living realm. We have a really cool cover here, cool artwork style for a YA book, and lots of color. I can't go too much into it, so I'm stalling. Next book. Also on November 21st, we have another fourth book in a series with Firebound. This is Fireborn, book number 4 by Vanessa Ritchie Thode. Sorry if I've pronounced both of those incorrectly. And again, this is epic fantasy and sword and sorcery, but it is a book number 4. On November the 24th, coming out this week, and also something that I've read and absolutely adored, is Spark of the Divine by Louise Holland. This is the Calarak Chronicles book number 1. This is high fantasy based on a true story. Save the gods. As a divine, May wields her strange gifts working as a mercenary until a simple rescue job has the crew uncover a plot to steal divinity from the gods. And when the god May serves is attacked, she must find a way to restore their power before the entire 7 realms will be thrown into chaos. If you are someone who loves your fantasy to have that D&D flair, you are going to have such a good time here. That classic 80s, 90s D&D fantasy vibe, super fun adventure, fantasy for fantasy's sake, full of magic, full of different species, full of incredible world building. You're going to have a good time here. I will have a full review for this one up on the 23rd of November, so you can go ahead and pre-order it for the next day if it sounds good to you. On November 25th is the second book that I've bought purely because the cover is friggin' stunning. I adore this cover. I cannot tell you how much I adore this cover. It will not convey through the camera, but just know I love it. I love it so very much. This is The Last Spell Night by T.J.J. Klamvik. This is book number 1 of the Spell Night series. Sir Archibald is the last of his kind, a solitary monster hunter desperately clinging to a world that has long since passed him by. Despite this, Archibald perseveres. There is no giving up as long as there are monsters to slay. Yes. On the 26th of November is another one I'm quite looking forward to reading, which is The Night of the Moon, A Dance of Light, book 0.5 by Gregory Contaxis. This is a character from Return of the Knights. If you know that name, Gregory Contaxis wrote Return of the Knights. It is a character that we follow in that story, and I believe it's just sort of their character story or how they came to be. John the Long Arm leads a life as a bounty hunter at the Three Heads. His name has spread far and wide across the north, while plenty of gold weighs down his pockets. I really, really enjoyed John. He was probably my favourite aspect of Return of the Night, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. On the 27th of November, we have Aujiwallya, I hope I pronounced that correctly, which is Jaya or Yaya, book number 3 by Geetha Krishnan. This is epic fantasy, sword and sorcery, and historical fantasy. I won't go too much into it because it is a book 3, but we'll put the cover on the screen as always. Also on November 27th, we have Quarantine 13 by Natalie Kelder. This is book number 3 in the Inner Universe, and it is sci fantasy. Natalie Kelder has some of the most beautiful covers out there. The colors just pop, and this is no different. I really love the use of the pinks here. We have a ship in the sky, and that excites me. If you've read these books and you think I'll like them, please let me know in the comments down below because I'm keen to give them a go. Now, on the 28th of November, there is a book that many people are excited for. People in my circles are raving about the arcs, and I'm excited to get to it myself. I am, of course, talking about The Bloodstones by Tori Tekken, The Legends of the Bruhai, book number 1. The cover is exciting, getting to finally experience some of Tori Tekken's writing. If you don't know who Tori is, she is Tori Talks here on the BookTube community, very big, does a lot of author interviews, which I quite, and just interviews and chats with people in the community, and it's really fun to watch. I really like her content, very much looking forward to reading what she has to offer in The Legends of the Bruhai. His name is not worthy. A traitor is executed, his name ripped away from history. Now the kingdom stands on the brink of a succession war that could bring the country to its knees. Forces stalk the darkness, moving pawns into place in a deadly game. That sounds fantastic, and I'm very much looking forward to picking this one up. Also on November 28th, we have Guardian. This is the Kane Legacy Book 2 by A.J. Kelvin, which is the second installment in this epic fantasy and sword and sorcery series. I believe the first cover is quite similar, just with a different sort of background in there. But Book 2, so we can't really go too much into it, but there is a person and what looks to be a dragon/dinosaur on the cover, which also has me intrigued. On November 28th as well, we have Order of the Shadow Dragon. This is Legacy of Light and Shadow Book 1 by Steve McKinnon, and this is epic fantasy. Now this cover and the start of this blurb just scream classic epic fantasy, and sometimes you just need that in your life. Magic is the enemy. When he discovers all is not what it seems, can a young knight survive long enough to protect his kingdom from betrayal? Doesn't that sound juicy, saucy? Should I even say those words? Potentially not. Speaking of saucy, on November 28th, we have A Consort of Fire, Bound to Fire and Steel Book 1 by Kit Roker, and this is a romance book, the first romance that we have on this list, and I think the only romance that we have on this list for November. For 3,000 years, an ancient dragon god has protected the borders of these sheltered lands. In return, he makes only one demand. Every 100 years, the mortal ruler must send their heir to serve as his consort, for as long as they can survive. And finishing us off on November 30th, we have Queen of Hope, Empire of Shattered Crowns, book number 3 by May Freighter. This is epic fantasy, sword and sorcery, and YA. With each passing day, life in Dante becomes more complicated. I mean, to me, that just seems like age. Life gets more complicated because more things hurt. Maybe that's me entering my middle-aged years. Who knows? Those are the books that we have coming out in November 2023. Have you read any of these? Have you picked any of them up? Are you going to? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.